for joining us tonight here at Kyora IQ. And this session is about vulnerability management essentials. I I love vulnerability management. I feel like it is the virtual equivalent of securing your house, right? Information systems are very important to what for everything we do today, banking, school, childcare, you name it. If it has some kind of digital footprint attached to it, then we need to keep it safe, right? So before we get started, I will take the time out to introduce myself. I am Nina Gunst. I have been working in cybersecurity now about 3 years. I specialize in vulnerability management and compliance. My specialty is a tool called Rapid7, um, which allows you to scan tools, but it's not the tool for tonight. It will actually be Tenable. So a fun fact about myself, I actually have a garden or had a garden. It's actually cold right now, so nothing's growing. But I do enjoy gardening and also taking the time out to become a better person through spiritual enlightenment. I do have a certification in AWS as well as in Azure, and I have also obtained a bachelor's degree in computer science. Um, is there anyone here that is currently working in cybersecurity or has a background in information systems?
I do.
Who's I do? I
Oh,
can't see.
Tristan.
Tristan. Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So definitely this session is informative, but if you have input, if you have any expertise that you think would benefit this conversation, we definitely encourage engagement. If you can't come off of mute or if I've moved too fast, please just raise your hand or drop the question in the chat and I will stop and slow down and give you guys time to get those questions in. There will be time at the end if we have it as well to answer questions, but definitely if you have a question related to what we're talking about, feel free to stop me so that we can discuss those in real time. Also, there are no dumb questions. So the only dumb question is the one you don't ask. If you have a question, please ask it. There may be someone else who does not want to ask the question, and you may have the question that they need to ask. Okay, so this is week one. We will obviously do an introduction to vulnerability management. We'll go over the vulnerability management lifecycle, what that looks like, continuous monitoring, and just getting familiar with the tool and its functionalities and capabilities. Week two, we'll go into configuration and vulnerability management, how to configure the tool, how to set up scans, right? How to actually accomplish some of those tasks to assess your environment. Week three will be vulnerability research, right? Researching the vulnerabilities, how long they've been out there, are there any active exploits, the best way to patch them, the best way to mitigate them if there's not a patch. And then week four, scoring and prioritization. There are multiple methods of scoring. We'll definitely get into those into more detail when the time comes. Risk scoring, actually using organizations like CVSS and their different versions of scoring and figuring out the best way to prioritize remediating your vulnerabilities based on those scores. Excuse me. Week five, frameworks and compliance mapping, making sure that you are identifying the controls that you need to meet in the different frameworks, and then mapping certain changes and configurations in your systems to different areas of compliance. And then in week six, going over reporting metrics, what the data looks like, how to effectively relay that information to teams, and then a lessons learned where we will have a final discussion. And that is the agenda that we have planned. Okay, so moving forward, what you can expect, these sessions will generally be 2 hours. So if you are not able to commit to the full 2 hours, they are recorded so that you are able to come back and review them at a later time. But definitely you want to go ahead and plan to commit 2 full hours once a week for this information. There will be a hands-on focus. You'll be able to actually do some of the activities in real time, log in, make changes, run scans, as well as apply them in real world case studies so that you can actually apply these skills in a real environment. Some of the topics that we'll be covering are asset and configuration management within Tenable, vulnerability research and the databases that go with them, some of the different scoring frameworks, the different versions of CVSS, payment card industry, CISA, KEV. Some of them may not be listed here, but if you guys have any that you're interested in and want to add to this, definitely open to doing that as well. If anyone's familiar with NIST, there actually is a brand new revision. So if you guys are open to it, because like I said, I get really excited, we can also look into the current versions as well as any revisions and newer versions so that you guys are always on the cutting edge of technology. And then reporting and remediation strategies, the most effective and efficient ways to make sure that you are securing your information systems. And as I mentioned before, these sessions are discussion driven, very interactive. Your input does matter, right? I may be an expert, but I do not know everything. Even in my field, we rely on the experts around us, the people that we work with every day. And peering is a skill as well. If you can bounce ideas off of another person to strengthen your concept or strengthen the project that you're working on, that will actually take you very far in the long run. And then the goal is to make sure that you can leave with a new skill in your toolkit. I like to think of these skills as like hammers and nails and screwdrivers, and one is not more important without the other, right? If you've got a screwdriver but nothing to screw, then it's kind of useless. So you add a lot of these different tools to your security tool belt so that when you go somewhere, you have a full toolkit where you can pull these things out, right? Also, don't be afraid to say, I don't know. I'll ask questions you may not know, but I don't know is also helpful. It shows that you're willing to learn, that even if you have a gap in your information, you're not too confident to say, I don't know. So make sure that you're taking these skills, you're putting them somewhere. If you're like me, you'll probably take notes so that you're able to look at a vulnerability, look at the score, and be able to tell right off the bat what you need to do with it, whether it's in operating system vulnerability, application, web application, database, right? You'll know what to do, and it's a foundation that will carry you far. Okay. Anybody have any questions before I move on? Okay. Then we will delve right into week one and we'll get right into vulnerability management and Tenable's ecosystem, right? The environment that makes up Tenable. So first, we're going to learn what is vulnerability management. What is that? What does that look like? What does that entail? A lot of time we go into these things and you can read papers all day long, but vulnerability management is a continuous life cycle of finding vulnerabilities, identifying how risky they are for an organization, and then prioritizing them effectively so that the risk does not increase or worst case scenario, right, cause a breach. You will find that you will be dealing with many different types of information. You'll need to be able to identify those types of information, right? Is it health related information? Do I need to make sure that it's HIPAA compliant? Is it, I don't know, a hotel, right? And they're taking payments. Is it payment card industry compliant, right? And being able to identify those different information systems, applying those different standards, controls, and guidances from the different organizations, and then securing those information systems moving forward. And hopefully you'll be able to describe the stages of the vulnerability management lifecycle, and not even in any particular order, because there are times where you'll have to do one and go back to another. So we'll also go through that as well. Okay, so what is vulnerability management? It is the first identification of vulnerabilities. You don't want to find vulnerabilities in the middle of an attack, right? You want to identify what they are, figure out the best way to reduce the risk, and then you can move into effectively managing those information systems moving forward. But if you wait for a breach to happen, it's already too late. So proactiveness is key. You want to make sure that the first thing you're doing is figuring out what's in your environment, right? Not just vulnerabilities. You have to actively identify assets, and in different environments, it can pose challenges. So you want to be able to see everything. Can you look across that network, scan that network, find your machines, and then find the vulnerabilities that are on them so that you can start to reduce the risk? After you've done that, you need a repeatable process. You can't just say, okay, well, I'm going to scan today. And then after I've, gone on vacation for 2 weeks, I'm going to run a scan again. No, you have to have a process nailed down, right? How are you going to make sure that you're monitoring these systems? Because vulnerabilities pop up all the time. People are super crafty, people are creative, and then some people are just downright bored, right? They get bored, they come up with these little worms or just little, it's not even malicious, right? They just get bored, they put it on a repo, someone downloads it, and now it's a 0 day, right? It's taking people's systems offline. So you need a process that you can use over and over again. And with that, you reduce the threat to your systems, right? Your systems are strong, they're secure, they don't have weaknesses in them. They don't have holes in them. And if you think about it like a house, right? You buy a house, the first thing you want to do, you want to make sure the locks work. Okay, great, the locks work. Do the windows have locks? Do you have a gate? If you don't have a gate, maybe you'll put a gate up, right? And then you realize that people are jumping over the gate, so you need a better one. So you put in a higher gate and you put in a keypad system. Well, people are still sneaking in. They can't get into the house, but they're coming over the fence. So you put in security cameras so that you can identify, right? You continue to build those layers of strength the same you would in your information systems. So most people don't think it's important, right? Oh, it's just my debit card information. Google has it saved and they promised me it was encrypted. Well, if the workstation for that organization is unsecure, then your debit card information is not safe at whatever organization it's sitting at. It's actually just one vulnerability away from causing a breach. So you want to continue to do these things so that you're not causing a risk, because that's the ultimate risk, right? A breach. Sure, you lose some data and it's just how many books somebody read, right? That is not damaging to a company. But if you lose people's social security numbers, you lose people's phone numbers, right? You lose trust. And after you've lost trust, it's really hard to get it back. And that is what damages the organization's reputation. And you want to make sure that you're not doing that, right? You're not just going in to fix, one or two vulnerabilities. You are actually keeping people's data safe, probably your data, because you don't know where you might end up, or I don't know where you work now, but you may end up at a company that could be your bank, and you realize that people are not only are they leaving their laptops open, but they don't have a patching cycle set up, right? They're not scanning their machines, and it's your bank. So that information is not being secured. They're not keeping it safe. They're not checking to see if there are vulnerabilities on their system. And that is the ultimate risk. So you definitely want to make sure that you have that mindset of you're protecting people's data. You are what's standing between people's livelihood and criminals. It's not just patching. It's not just remediation. It's not just, oh, I ran a scan, I saw, 5,000 vulnerabilities. It's no big deal. No, that's a big deal, right? You could potentially be the victim of an attack, or in a large scale, right? The organization would be the victim of an attack. Okay. And then we'll go into the life cycle. So as we said, the first thing you want to do is you want to discover. Now, this is not one time, right? Environments change. Some of them can be really static, right? They're old. There's 8 machines. It's never going to change. But in today's world, environments are fluid, especially when you go into cloud environments. Those environments sometimes include things like auto scaling groups. So you want to continuously discover new assets, new devices, new appliances, whatever it is that is in that environment. You want to make sure that you are continuously discovering that area all the time. After you've discovered the environment and discovered the assets, you now want to prioritize them, right? What are these devices? What is their purpose? What do they do? If it's the digital clocks around the office, probably not a big deal, right? If it's the cameras, maybe it might be more important, not a big deal. But if it's the database servers that hold all the medical records for your clients, right? Now you know where to focus your efforts. So being able to identify those information systems and prioritize them effectively is also the next step. And then, as I said, it's not always that one time, right? Priorities may change. There may be that now you have forward-facing computers in the lobby, and now you have like outsider risk, right? You now have different levels of risk that are introduced. If your database is behind multiple layers of security, it's on a virtual private network, you can't get to it without credentials, right? It's probably pretty safe that it's not that high on the priority list, but you will learn how to effectively prioritize the assets. And then you assess them, right? You run a scan using a vulnerability scanning tool like Tenable to figure out the posture of your security environment. How many vulnerabilities are out there? Do I have criticals? Do I have highs, mediums, lows? And then beginning to build out a plan to bring the risk down for that organization. And then you will report on that, right? However you choose to do it, whether it's through a graphical user interface, a report that you download, you'll provide that information to the team. With that, they now move into remediation. We have our list of things that we need to fix. We know which ones are most important, and now we can start to fix those assets. After they have confirmed that they fixed them, you have to verify. You cannot just assume or trust, right? We want to make sure that there is a zero trust, and you do need to re-verify. So using a scanning tool like Tenable, you would scan again to confirm that they had either been remediated, removed, patched, or mitigated in some form that they no longer posed a risk. And this cycle is cyclical. It's one of those, I don't know, it's one of those circle words, right? Because you'll do it over and over again. And you may get to a point where you don't have to discover anything because it's a static group. So you're not doing that step all the time. You've prioritized the assets and you're not doing that anymore, but you are constantly assessing them, right? Because, for instance, Windows is probably the best example. Patch Tuesday. Every second Tuesday of the month, they release patches for their systems, right? Could be small, could be big, but you want to make sure that if you're utilizing a Windows system, that you are continuously getting those patches, having them applied to your systems that so that they continue to stay safe. And I know I talk a little fast and sometimes I move a little faster. So if anyone has interjected, let me check the chat. And hi, Jason. Excuse me. So, as I was discussing before, we definitely want to make sure that we have visibility first. I know everyone's like, I want to scan, I want to scan, I want to scan, right? You have to know what you're scanning. In order to scan, you need targets. Most of the time, you need host names or IP addresses in order to reach a target in order to scan it. So it's very it's critical to your vulnerability management that you know what's out there and that you find an effective way to keep track of these assets somewhere in some kind of asset inventory tracking tool. So once you've identified um, the devices and you know what's out there and you've inventoried them, you have to make sure that you can continue to keep that inventory up to date, right? If someone is brought on, a new machine is brought from the depot, you want to make sure that you are definitely adding that to the inventory. If you don't, what happens is those machines get lost somewhere. Okay. And if you can't see it, you can't scan it. And if it's out there in the wind and it's got vulnerabilities on it and it continues to age, right? Some novice is going to figure out how to exploit it. And if that machine for that organization does not have enough layers of defense, that risk will increase. So inventory is key. You have to know what is out there. If the inventory is incomplete, you have to make sure that your clients, your subscribers, your consumers know that, hey, this inventory is incomplete. I can run a scan, but once I run the scan, things could be missing. Okay. So it's critical that you know, hey, if it's on-prem, right, physical machines, like a new laptop, a new login, right? If you're using Active Directory in some kind of cloud somewhere, right? That you are keeping track of those things as they come online. Same thing with servers, right? As a new server comes, you want to make sure that you are adding that to your inventory. And sometimes it can get tricky, right? Because in the cloud, you have things like auto scaling groups. Machines spin up, they spin down all the time. Inventory is key. You have to keep track of it. If it becomes a problem, right, make sure you're effectively communicating that because scanning, right, is just scanning is just the legwork that comes after you've identified the inventory. If you don't have a clear picture of your security posture, that is a risk. The vulnerabilities don't matter. If you patch all of your machines and you leave one hanging out in the wind, that is the riskiest thing ever. Okay. So yes, patching and scanning and remediating is great, but inventory is key. You miss a machine and it gets hacked and no one knows about it, that is probably the worst nightmare ever, okay? So once you have all your assets and you are able to identify that you have them all, then you scan. If you go into scanning without all your assets, you have already created a risk. And I know that probably sounds a little grim, but that's the reality of working in an organization, in an enterprise environment, right? You miss one of their machines, they spin up a new machine. And I mean, we're talking hospitals, banks, grocery stores, gas stations, right? This is people's information. You don't want to miss a machine. So, um, there are industry standards that ensure that we stay compliant, right? That everyone in the world has rules that we all can follow to make sure that we are doing the best to keep our information systems secure. So there is CVE, MVD. You should be familiar with CVSS, V2, which is now V3, moving into V4. That's your normal, 1 through 10 or 0 through 10 scoring system. And then your CVE database is where you would have on a vulnerability, it will have CVE dash, right? There are people who contribute vulnerability data to that organization so that they have it and can ID it. So when you see it, you have a clear record of where to go and get that fixed. The SysAkev catalog for prioritized exploited vulnerabilities. There are other exploitation databases, one that you may be familiar with, like ExploitDB, but this one is a nationally recognized catalog for the prioritized, the ones at the top of the list. And then PCI DSS compliance, right? Payment card industries. And then there are others, right? Of course, if there's healthcare, you have HIPAA. If there's federal or government, you have other standards that you need to follow. So while this does not include all of them, feel free to go out and educate yourself, right? Go out and find out the other industry standards so that you're well versed. You don't have to know them by heart, but at least if you see an information system, you can recognize which industry standard needs to be applied, and then you can go out and download that from their website, right? And then follow that compliance guidance. Okay, so using Tenable. Tenable gives you the ability to automate those steps, right? You can schedule them to run with no intervention, right? You set it up, it does it for you, even when vulnerabilities are discovered, right? Criticals, highs, it runs that scan, it finds it for you, it can perform actions so that you're not tied down to time consuming task, right? You can spend your time researching security best practice, engineering some of the best vulnerability management solutions, and not actually doing the vulnerability management. Okay. So, in order to accomplish that, you have a scanning engine, you have the cloud platform, and then you have the security center, which is your on prem platform. Um, has anyone used Tenable? Is anyone familiar with the tool?
I am Tristan.
Okay. Nice. And you've already run some scans and maybe multiple operating systems, Windows, Linux. Do you like it?
It's my primary work. That's what I do now.
Okay.
It's okay. The company I work for probably isn't the best. But overall, I do like Tenable. I like the product.
Nice. Okay. I've used Tenable. I think it's pretty cool. I also like it. So it definitely is one of the good ones. I've used Wazza. I don't know if you've heard of that one, and then Rapid7. So there are different tools out there. I say try them all. Okay. So how Tenable works, you will perform scans, as I stated, very comprehensive scans that will give you different levels of vulnerabilities on your machines, identification, being able to, I think this slide is broken. This one's broken. That's funny. Okay. But you'll be able to scan your machines and then effectively identify vulnerabilities with their risk scoring, CVE IDs, the proof, right? Being able to find out where they are, how to effectively fix those. And then having historical data, right? Being able to track those vulnerabilities over time. I think there are some dashboards. Yes, there are some dashboards where you can actually build out like line charts, pie charts, whatever you like to see to kind of show your remediation trends, show your vulnerability trends, right? The the influx, right? Do you have more towards the end of the month? And just being able to show how you progress through the vulnerability management lifecycle over time. There are different plugins, right? As we know, there are a plethora, a large amount of operating systems, right? You've got Windows, but inside of Windows, you have 2016, 2019, 2022, 2025 just came out. I don't know if they released it yet, but then you've got Red Hat, right? Red Hat 6, Red Hat 7, Red Hat 8, Red Hat 9. Then you've got Oracle Linux, and then you've got um what's that other one? OpenSUSE, right? You got all these different operating systems. So they have a multitude of plugins that you can use that allow you to not only assess these machines, but also do some pretty cool things as far as remediating and tracking those vulnerabilities within the tool. And then integration. There are other tools that will work with Tenable, right? If you're working in Azure, if you're working in AWS, if you're on a SOC team, if you are on a network team, you can integrate these tools with other ones. If you are into automation, so I don't get to talk about that much because I'm always doing vulnerability management, but I also code. I like to write script in different languages, Ruby, Java, Python, C++, YAML, Ansible, right? I will go and I will find code. If I need a job done and I don't want to do it by hand, I'll go out and find it. And you can integrate those different tools with your Tenable tool. So it's really cool, right? You scan, you identify vulnerabilities, you can look at their scores based on CVSS scoring or risk scoring or whatever scoring method you choose, being able to track those vulnerabilities over time, having these plugins that you can use to support multiple operating systems and system types, right? And then integrating Tenable with other tools. And I do apologize for this slide. I did not realize it was broken, and I hope that my explanation will suffice. Um, and that is how Tenable works. Okay. So I have a question. Everyone always says 0 day, 0 day, 0 day. Does anyone know what the other vulnerability that pops up at I call it an opportune time is called? Maybe hopeful. I'm super hopeful. No, not right. It's called a holiday vulnerability. So a lot of the times people say 0 day, but hackers are getting really crafty and they know that we're a little more lax around the holidays. So Thanksgiving, we're doing a bunch of online shopping. Christmas, we're doing a lot of online shopping. They're sometimes referred to as holiday vulnerabilities. Probably the worst one, which we'll talk about here in a second, was Log4j because I actually lived and breathed and probably died through that whole thing. So a 0 day vulnerability is probably um, one of the most interesting things that can happen in the cybersecurity world. A vulnerability is now out in the world that can be exploited, and there is no fix as it stands right now. And most of the times when there's no fix, it's really hard to find it as well. So we rely on people in the world, in our communities, people that are ethical to report like there is a vulnerability, right? Someone just hacked my system, or hey, I just hacked a system and realized that I can get in, or someone got into mine. And we have to find a way to patch it immediately. Um, at that time, it is literally all hands on deck, and I've seen it happen all kind of ways. Sometimes the vendor, right, that is supplying a product has a fix and they give it to you. And then sometimes it's not vendor related, right? It's configuration related, right? You've got to set a password on this setting of this length or they can brute force you or something, right? And you guys have to be able to quickly find that and then fix it. Find a way to block it. One of the quickest ways, right? Take it offline. If you can't fix it and it has heat on it, you turn it off. Um, Always remember that, right? If you are in an IMC, right, you're in an incident call, you're on some kind of 0 day call, your client is asking you, what do we do? We are losing data, right? We've got 2 gigs of data has already flooded out of the system. Turn it off, okay? Until you have a fix. And then you do not turn it back on, right? You go to another system, a secure system, right? You figure out a way to fix that. And that should be the guidance, right? 0 days are probably, like I said, the most interesting thing that can happen in cybersecurity because no one knows what to do. And they're going to rely on you at some point, right, to help them out. That will be your job. What do we do? we secure it, right? We block it. If they got in through an unsecure account, we remove the account, right? We triage this machine. You treat it like it has the flu, right? You quarantine it, you sit it off somewhere by itself, and then you start to pump the fixes into it. If it gets too bad, you have to shut it off from everything, right? And now it's a biohazard. And don't turn it on until we figure out what's wrong with it. But definitely make sure that you understand the urgency that goes with a breach, okay? Or a 0 day or some kind of exploit, something. Get some more. Time goes by really fast, and it does not seem like it's been 5 years since the solar winds breach. Um, but these are actually real world breaches that happened. If anyone has some free time right now, I would actually say Google one or two of these and just read about the impact that it had. Um, Log4j was my first one, like actually being all hands on deck, right? In 2020, I was not an engineer. So I saw it, I was like, wow, that's crazy. But 2021, I was an engineer, right? I got the phone call, the alarms were going off, people were waking up, right? And not because like we had a breach, but it was a big deal. They were being breached, right? So it was all hands on deck, right? Like everybody stop what you're doing, secure these systems. Now, whatever you have to do, you have to lock them down, right? If you don't, we are going to lose lots of money. And those kinds of reactions were a result of probably that really big one, right? Equifax credit, right? Everybody wants to have good credit. So people pumped their information into these platforms, right? Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and one of them got breached, right? They missed a patch and it seems little. And through that, someone was able to exploit those systems and a lot of records were exposed. My stuff was exposed, right? And that's when you really start to take it seriously. Even today, right? I've got some pretty strong security and it will tell me like, "Hey, I found this on the dark web. I found this password in an exposed report. Like you have to change it." And it is real. There are people out there. I don't have a Twitter. Not because I don't want one. My Twitter got hacked and it now belongs to somebody else. And every so often, whoever it is forgets the password and I get an email with the confirmation number, right? Like, it seems you have forgotten your password. Here's your confirmation number. And that account is forever gone, right? Because my information got leaked and it's real, right? You definitely want to take it serious. You don't want to be the victim of one of these attacks because somebody said it's okay, you can skip the patch, right? You don't want to do that. So, threat intelligence. How do we stay aware? We use tools, right? We can sit and search Google and we can ask AI all day long, but the best way to do it is with tools. You want to have it automated. You want this stuff in real time. Some people are, I call it very adamant and vigilant. And you can set this automation up to run every hour if you want to, right? Every minute, every hour, every day, every minute on the minute, you can be aware. The organizations out there, I feel like do a really good job of keeping their stuff up to date. Lately, if there's a 0 day, it has it already has a CVE ID attached to it, right? I don't think I've seen a 0 day lately that didn't already have an ID, that the vendors did not already have a check that they were releasing quickly in a hot fix or something. And most of the time within an hour you've got emails from all of them, right? Here's one from Microsoft, here's one from AWS, here's one from Google, right? That there's a fix and you need to apply it. Now the browsers, right, most of the time they get their fixes at the same time. Chrome, Edge, Firefox, they all identify a vulnerability, they fix it, they push out a fix, it's over, right? And that is done by tools like Tenable. They scan the machines, they find it, they see, oh, wow, this looks like it could be a threat, right? It looks like it could cause a problem. There is an exploit out there, right? Like your machine's not being exploited today, but there is one out there. And now we know that it needs to be fixed. So having that, knowing what's out there, knowing, because you can have 6,000 vulnerabilities. If no one's exploiting it, it's not that big of a deal. if you have a vulnerability that someone already knows how to exploit, they know how to push a denial of service attack to your machine, they know how to export data out of your machine with pseudo access, right? That is a problem. That means someone can get onto their system and with enough vigilance can do some real harm. So you definitely want to make sure that you are aware, and using tools like Tenable gives you that intelligence to the threats across your environment so that you can continue to strengthen your security posture. And even I know sometimes like in when you're working for a company, you're like, well, it's my job, right? But also think about if it was someone else, if it was someone you know, it could be you. So you want to take it seriously. If this is the field that you're going into, be passionate about it, right? So, um, based on what we talked about in the life cycle management, and I can go back if anyone needs to look at that again. We talked about the bigger well, I talked about all I did was run my mouth, you know. We talked about some of the bigger incidents that happened, right? And how they happened. One of them, someone missed a patch, right? And another one, there wasn't a lot of data loss, but a lot of people had to respond to fix this in a short amount of time, right? If better vulnerability management had been used and applied, and we can pick one, right? You whichever one you think is the most interesting, and then pick a stage, right? And this is not right or wrong. This is how we learn and how we grow and figure out, right? Like, how do we use this life cycle management in the most efficient way? Because someone decided this was a good way to do it, but can I do it better? So, if someone has some input, I think it would be pretty cool to talk about one of those events and where something could have been done better in the life cycle to reduce some of that impact. And if anyone is talking, you could be on mute.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Jayla. How are you?
I'm good, Nina. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
I don't have anything to add as far as events, but as you were discussing, walking us through different topics, um, I'm a little confused on what a patch is. Is it just an update of a system or multiple systems?
Yeah. So a patch is like a fix, a band aid, essentially. It's literally like a bolt. A bolt has a hole in it, and you're slapping a little fix over it. They are normally little software packages that are released by the vendor or the provider of the software you're using. Think about on your machine. Do you have a Windows or a Linux? Are you Apple or HP, or what kind of laptop do you have?
I have a Mac, or I do my work at work on a Windows.
Okay, so sometimes you'll get a little pop-up box, right, that says you have an update waiting. And you'll click it and you'll apply that update. And sometimes it may even force you to reboot, right? That's typically a patch. If you go into your update center in Windows, sometimes it'll have a tag on it like KB number, right? It's a fix that they release to patch the system because it has like a leaky hole in it, right? It has a vulnerability and they need to fix it, but they have to give it to end users. So when you provide a product, I don't know if any of you build products, but as a vendor, when you provide a product, there is shared responsibility model or something like that. So if you don't own the product and you are a consumer, then they are responsible for keeping that product up to date. So that's a small package they'll release. Sometimes they don't even release it right. They'll put it in a repo, like for Red Hat. They'll put it somewhere and say, hey, grab the patch from here and put it on your machine so that it's no longer insecure. So that's a patch, an update or a fix to resolve a vulnerability.
Thank you for that. I'll make sure to connect it with the boat analogy.
No problem. Yeah. And then the patches, right? I call everything a patch. Everything is not a patch. Sometimes it's a mitigation, right? If they say apply this patch or disable the feature as a mitigation, right? You just disable it. and now it's mitigated. It's only a risk if it's enabled. So it's not always a patch. Sometimes there is a mitigation, which is also like a change or a fix that you can make that doesn't quite fix it, right? So you didn't cover the hole, but you did put an extra, little motor on the back there to push you a little faster, right? So you can mitigate it and it's not as risky as it was because you'll get to shore before the boat floods, right? So you can mitigate something or you can fully remediate it. Sometimes it's a patch. Some companies call them a hot fix. Some call them an update. It just depends on the verbiage they're using. Great question. Yes, Aaliyah.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, yes. Okay, so I guess my question would be, so let's say you're working or you find a vulnerability that's in regards to a specific vendor. So let's say uh Microsoft or Apple, one of them. Um, and it's kind of, I guess, more in need of their specific patches. If you're not able to, I guess, get that specific patch in time, do you just disable it, like you would say?
Um, if you can disable it, I would say yes. Most of the vendors are really good about support. They have a number you can call or a ticketing system where you can put something in. Um, the software. Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. So, Lee, is that question related to what Aaliyah is talking about, or is that separate? I just want to make sure I'm not leaving it. Software development lifecycle, right? Sorry, Aaliyah. I just want to make sure, man. The
Oh, I'm sorry. Can
question
you
on the
repeat that?
screen. Ah, okay. It's the vulnerability management lifecycle. So I'll go back to yours. Sorry. Okay, so Aaliyah, they do a good job about providing support. Typically, if you've identified a vulnerability that they have not released a patch for, they'll have one relatively soon once you bring it to their attention. So if you've got a bug on your machine, you don't have a fix for it, you would contact them. They have support numbers, emails, um, ticketing systems, right? And most vendors, if you're using it in an organization, there is some kind of enterprise support. And if you're using it as an end user outside of an organization, let's say you're building your own vulnerability management environment, there
Hmm.
will be a level of support for end users as well. There are communities, forums, blogs, all kind of resources where really smart people get together and put information out there to help people when there are bugs. I found things in Stack Overflow, Reddit, GitHub, um, and like I said, if it's enterprise support, then they will have, someone you can contact to say, my system has a bug, I need you to fix it. Like you said, definitely quarantining that system until you have a fix is the ideal solution. If they can't quarantine it, right? Everybody's scrambling around, it's been an hour, you make them turn it off. If they won't turn it off, you write up the longest paragraph you can, you take screenshots, you include everything you can so that when it comes back, you show that you did provide clear direction for the best way to avoid that risk. Because that's what it's about. It's risk, right? And when it comes down to it, someone has to take the blame for all of that risk. So you find a vulnerability, you can't get it fixed. You've tried to reach out to the vendor, you've tried to work with them, they won't shut it off, you can't quarantine it. Just document everything really well. That's the very at the very least, right? Document everything. Because sometimes you'll tell them like, "Hey, you should disable that feature." Well, we're using it. Well, the system's insecure, right? It's going to cause a problem. You'll run into that as well where even the direction you're providing is not being taken even though it's the best thing to do. So, long answer, but short answer is yes, provide that direction and then document everything.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Um what stage? Yeah, it looks like Lee was struggling. I'm gonna go back to the life cycle just so I can better understand your question. Um, so this is the life cycle that we're actually referring to, and um, the events that happened were basically asking, right, what probably could have done better? Was it that they didn't identify enough assets? Did they not assess their environments, in a timely manner, which is why they didn't identify the vulnerability in time? Did they not, send the information out to the right teams? Did they have the information and didn't remediate it, right? Did they fix it and they thought it was fixed, but they didn't do a rescan and it didn't get verified? Is kind of what that question was asking, right? Where could something have been done better in this life cycle regarding those events, right? Like Equifax, all that data got leaked. How do we think that people were able to get in and get that data out in that amount, right? Like there had to be a breakdown in this life cycle for that to happen. And it's to get your thought going, right? We don't know what happened. We weren't there. We don't know that somebody didn't send out an email with all their passwords, right, to somebody and then they got in. It's mostly just speculation, but I thought it would be fun to just take a minute and see if we could apply what we learned about the life cycle to one of these breaches that did actually happen in real life. Sorry, I think I went back. And I can leave it here if you guys would like. I don't mind. Before we go, I'd like to pause and discuss. So this was the question. Where do you think they could have reduced some of the impact? And we can just pick one. Do we want to do log4j? Asset management. Okay. And which breach? Oh, my screen is not doing right. Jeez. And others, please feel free to use the chat. I don't mind reading from the chat at all.
Please feel free to come off mute and give a guess, even if it's wrong. How about that?
Yes, please engage, please. Yes, log4j. Okay, asset management, definitely. That's a good point, right? Most of the reason why there was such a big response is because people were trying to figure out if they had it, right? And then you run into the issue of where's all my stuff? So I agree. Asset management definitely could have helped them resolve that a lot easier, right? It should have been as simple as plug in the fix and run it on all your systems. But no, people had to scramble to fix it because it was something that you had to go and look for. It wasn't like right out in the open. So definitely, I agree. Anybody else? Anyone who's not at work?
Anyone who knows how to use ChatGPT real fast.
That is also a skill. If you can say, I don't know, but I can get that information and then go get it, it will serve you well. So I challenge two people to find me a breach that happened that's not on this screen.
Preach, sister, preach. You let me
Yes.
utilize your resources tonight.
I challenge two people to find me a breach that's not on this screen. No, you're fine. You're fine, Tavia. That's why I said
Oh my
someone who's
God.
not at work, right? We want this to be fun. We want it to be light, right? I'm not that stiff. I mean, I'm pretty stiff, but I'm not
I
that
need to
stiff.
know what Lee's excuse is while he got me watching these bubbles come across the chat.
Lee said he is saving his voice to cheer for football. So you get what you can get here.
That ain't what Lee said. That ain't what Lee said.
I'm trying to save you, Lee.
Oh, he on the phone
Okay.
too.
No, I understand. I also work. I just get up really early and do my work during the day. Can someone give a thumbs up? Is this engaging? Is any of this information helpful? Give a thumbs down if you heard all this before and I just wasted your night, right? Like, let us know that this is helpful and engaging, right? I did smile. I was gonna come on and just be like, learn vulnerability management, secure your stuff. save my bank account, right? No, I'm joking. um, but yeah, I really enjoy vulnerability management. I enjoy what we do, right? What we bring to the information systems that are out there, right? This is where we are. This we live in the age of data, and you have to be able to find your niche, find your way to break in and make yourself valuable. And what better way to do that than data? I know people spend all kinds of time like on their phone. Think about like TikTok. I was hoping somebody would put TikTok up here. TikTok's not allowed. So yes, Aaliyah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I guess two examples would be, well, I know one that I remember very fondly or just remember is the Sony PlayStation breach.
Hmm.
And another one I found was the NASA one. So those
Nice.
are two examples.
Hmm.
You go,
Yes.
girl.
Go ahead. I love it. I love it. Yes. There are many times also where breaches happen and they don't say anything because all they have to do is publish it, right? And people don't know that these things happen more frequently than we think. And sometimes a breach happens and nothing gets lost. So, um, oh my gosh, do you really want to talk about active risk? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
Lee
All right.
wants to discuss. Well, he wants to listen.
Okay. I get so excited when we talk about active risk. Okay. But that's what you're asking, right? How do you gauge CVSS scores versus real likelihood and impact? Well, with active risk. And that's what we've been talking about, right? 0 days, exploitable vulnerabilities. Okay, hold on. I gotta take a deep breath because I'm way too excited. Okay, you guys also, if you're gonna do this, if you're gonna be in cybersecurity, find something that gets you excited. Okay, if you're not excited, it's just a paycheck. You're going to burn out. You don't want to get into something that you don't have a passion for. Okay. Find you something that definitely nerd activities. Okay. Like, totally agree. Don't get me off topic because I have to stay on track. And I don't think they have me here to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and Satisfactory. Okay. So we're going to stay focused today. Okay. And we're going to talk about scores. So yes, most of the time, scoring is a very effective way to remediate vulnerabilities. If it's critical, right, that means that it probably poses a very serious risk. But as I explained, if it poses a serious risk, but no one's exploited it in 9 years, they probably can't exploit it. So, is it really posing any risk? Probably not. However, if you have a vulnerability that has a score of 0, and your organization is telling you because it's 0, you don't have to fix it, and you don't, but it has an active risk score of 1,000, and you are not using asset risk score, then that will probably cause a gap in your remediation procedure. Okay. CVSS scores are great. Risk scores are better. Okay. Risk scores actually identify the risk based on impact to your system. Active risk scores are supreme. Okay. Active risk not only identifies the risk to your systems, but it also identifies the risk based on exploitability. And if that vulnerability is out there and it has already been exploited and it is in an exploit database, and there is an exploit that I or you or anyone can go and download and run it on your machine, it is a risk. What you need is active risk scoring. And if you don't have active risk scoring, use your risk score and the presence of an exploit. Does that make sense? So if you've got a 10 and there's no exploit out there, it does need to be fixed. It does not need to be fixed as quickly as a score of 2 that has an exploit out there. That's how you gauge real likelihood and impact. Score is great, yes. And once you have anything with an exploit fixed, great. Go back to your scoring method because the risk is still there. If it's a critical because it could damage that organization's reputation. it needs to be fixed, right? You don't want to be leaking critical information out to the world. But if it's not being exploited and no one has broken it in 13 years or even a year, right? I know I'm always being dramatic, but if no one's broken it in a year, then focus on the one that people are exploiting, right? That's sitting in the database where someone can go and actually, breach one of your systems. Make sure if there's an exploit, you prioritize that first. If there is not an exploit, but it has been, I don't know, it's the risk score is really high because it was on too many forums, or they noticed that there were some indicators of compromise, some behavioral indicators of compromise. So they increased the risk score. Pay attention to that. If your risk score is 0 to 1,000, right? You got a risk score of 800 and a score of 3, you have a problem. If you have a score of 10 and a risk score of 200, not so much. You need to use both. A lot of organizations will try to prioritize one of the other. In real vulnerability management, that is not the effective way to use it. You use them all together as a team. They hold hands, they go to the playground, and they ride the merry-go-round together. Oh, looks like we lost Jason. Okay. Does that answer your question, Lee? And then Aaliyah, I see you have a question.
Yes, about that. So you said that if it hasn't been uh like attacked within a certain amount of years or it's just kind of old, how do you really determine that again? Is it just based off of what the organization has faced in the past, or is it just searching for stuff similar to that in different areas of the internet and seeing if that's a common attack or vulnerability?
So, really good question. When you run a scan, it has lots and lots of good data. The thing about these organizations and these databases, right? The CVE, the NVD, CVSS, they actually attach dates to the vulnerabilities. So, a vulnerability will have a published date. So, if it was published in, let's say, September of 20 or 2001, it's going to say that, right? That it was published in September of 2001. And then if that vulnerability got an update in 2013, it will say updated October 2013. So you'll know how long that vulnerability has been out there because it'll have a date. Now, if you have a vulnerability that does not have a CVE ID, um, I think the latest one I've seen is like Amazon Machine Images have their own AMI ID, right? It's like an Amazon only vulnerability. Then yeah, you may have to do some digging. You may even want to just use the cloud native scanning service because then Tenable might not give you what you need. But for the most part, it's going to tell you like it was published in 2023, right? And then if there's an exploit, sometimes it'll even have a column, right, that says exploit available, yes or no. So it will go out to the different exploit databases and check for you. So you'll know how long that vulnerability has been out there. Is there an exploit? And all of that will be in your report.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, good discussion. Thank you guys. That was engaging. Okay. And then just some of the words, we like to call it acronym soup. We do throw a lot of acronyms out there, right? You're going to run into more you'll run into acronyms that actually represent more than one thing. And you'll just have to get used to it, unfortunately. But we have some key terms and a couple fun facts just so it doesn't feel like me yelling at you all night and telling you to secure your systems, right? So, a vulnerability, that is a weakness or a flaw. I like to use the house analogy. I think it helps to drive the point home, right? You have a house and you have a broken window. That's a weakness or a flaw. You have a house, but your back door does not have a lock. Front door does, but not the back door. You have a house, it has an alarm system, but the code is written on the mat on the front door, right? When you start to think of it like that, you realize like, okay, there are steps that can be taken to make this a more secure home for my information system. Um, and the fun fact here is the Morris worm. I think we talked about that, which exploited a flaw in Unix systems and it did shut down about 10% of the internet. If I'm not mistaken, this was not a malicious attack. This was two kids playing around with some technology and software, and unfortunately, they sent it to a friend who sent it to someone else, and then everybody got it, and it started to take systems offline. But if I'm remembering correctly, that was not the intent, right? But they realized that this could be used maliciously, and that was like the caveat of how the vulnerability management thing began. So CVE, common vulnerabilities and exposure, CVSS, common vulnerability scoring system, vulnerability priority rating, threat intelligence, um, 0 day, and then I don't know if it's in here, but also remember that sometimes they are called holiday vulnerabilities because hackers will wait until the holidays. So definitely you want to make sure that you are remembering that vulnerability management is continuous. It never ends. You need to have a strategy, right? A process that you can repeat over and over again to make sure that you have visibility into your security environments, visibility into your security posture, and then a clear, definitive way to make sure that you continue to strengthen the posture and reduce risk for an organization. Tenable does a good job of pulling all of that vulnerability data into one area so that you can see it and then prioritize effectively based on that data. And if you stick with it, you can prevent damage to organizations, you can prevent breaches, and you can make sure that you are not responsible for, you know, damage to our integrity, to our data systems, to our information systems, to just the livelihood of people that rely on data and technology to be productive. So um, just remember, asset inventory is key, right? Can't protect what you can't see. So next week, we're going to get into it, right? How do we discover those assets? How do we see them? And then how do we configure our systems to target those assets? How do we configure our systems to run those scans, right? But remembering at the bottom of it all, if you can't see it, you can't protect it. If you get 99 systems and there was really 100 and then that one gets breached, that was your riskiest asset. Okay. Um, and then, as noted, I did stand in for Miss Ashley tonight. But if anyone would like to reach out to me or have questions for me, I'll drop my email in the chat for you guys. And that way, if you want to follow up, I am more than happy to answer some follow-up questions. Um, Also, you are able to book sessions or subscribe to more of these learning sessions directly through Kyora IQ so that we can continue to support you and provide this information. So there's Miss Ashley's email, and also my email is in the chat. And it looks like we have some time left, so I want to say thank you for everyone who